Welcome back to Team Talk, ladies and gentlemen, the hottest football debate show on YouTube. I'm adjudicating today, but in the hot seats, we've got Patrick Van Straten.
Hi.
Sam Abasaki.
What are you saying? I wasn't even hold my mic. What are you saying? Pat, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm happy to be sitting next to you again.
Yeah.
What is this? I'm in charge of introducing.
I know. Sorry.
We've got Dougie. And we got Michael McCoven. Hello.
Very excited.
Just quickly, Pat, based on something you were saying beforehand, do you have any allegiances in this game? Have you got alliances that you're going to be trying to build to win Team Talk today?
I've got an alliance with the truth, Henry.
I like that.
So I will
Never lets you down.
I'll be spitting facts solely, and anybody else who has the balls to tell the truth gets my support. So when Dougie is on Twitter enraging Chelsea fans by making them face reality, I back him up. When Sam is talking nonsense, right in his back.
Wow.
Could be a tough show today because we will be looking for our contestants to build a Premier League all-time 11.
Oh my
But
God.
before that happens, we've got a little warm-up round, a little quick fire related to nothing in football at the moment, just to get the juices flowing. It's keep or bin. It's VAR.
Love that.
Straight VAR.
Wow.
People
Keep
be-
or bin VAR.
Keep or bin VAR. And I just want to set a precedent here. This isn't based, I'm not going to be judging it based on what I think is the truth. It's based on who impresses me the most with their arguments.
We got new pens.
3, 2, 1, reveal.
Oh, wow.
Well, that's a shame.
Yeah, we're not controversial like that.
That's boring.
That is a shame.
No, to be fair, though, I feel like everyone has the same mindset. Like, we just want it to be used properly and consistently.
Even better.
And just,
They can help themselves out as well. Like semi-automated offsides, introduce that. The handball rule they've been messing around with for far too long as well. But I think people forget that before VAR, we had exactly the same debates every weekend. And I know it's frustrating because they introduced it to eradicate those debates. But it's not possible when humans are running technology. There are always going to be mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's not really the technology's fault. It's the people running it.
But what I remember when VAR came in was that people were worried that the debates were going to leave. People were like, "Oh well, but we like that element of football." And actually, VAR was never meant to eradicate the debates. It was just meant to make it a more fair game, which actually it has. It has monumentally made it a more
What
fair
about the
game.
anti-Liverpool conspiracy?
A larger
Conspiracy
percentage of decisions are
not
correct
fair?
now than ever. Like that is the thing. Fundamentally, like the controversy from the weekend just gone is that a goal that was onside was called offside. That has been going on in football for 100 years. Like that used to happen all the time. You would just see your team would lose because a goal that was offside got called onside or the other way around. Like it would happen all the time. And now Liverpool are just like, the game has fallen. Like this cannot go on any longer because it happened against Liverpool Football Club. No one cares. That makes it better, if anything.
I don't know, but I think it's just the fact that it's like
It's embarrassing.
It's
It's
not getting
embarrassing.
worse, yeah. But
The
it's
whole
like
game's embarrassing.
you'd expect 7 games.
A
into
mistake like that
season,
is embarrassing
7 games
from
into
them.
a season, you are getting better. You're using the VAR. You're seeing consistent decisions with the handballs, with the offsides, with penalties, everything. But I feel like now, like Duke said, it's just subjective. Every decision is based off of one man looking at a screen and saying, "Oh, you know what? That's the line I'm putting out today." It's like, nah. If there's not going to be automatic lines on the pitch, or you're not going to use a semi-automated offside, then it's just going to be like this every single week, and I actually cannot be bothered to have VAR conversations anymore.
But it is a rarity though. The offside stuff is like, they are glaring mistakes, but there's been 2 or 3 of them in the last 2 years. Like that is something that should be very easily remedied.
Even the handballs though,
Yeah,
when it's above your head. Or
But that's about the rule,
But
not
yeah,
about VAR.
that's about rules, and I think.
But it's still how the person determines whether it's their
Sure,
hand or not.
but that's ultimately all of those decisions have always been subjective. Handball has always been quite subjective, depending on who the referee is. Red cards are very subjective. It depends how much do we want the game to be completely mechanical and be completely black and white, which is almost impossible because, like Pat was alluding to, the rules don't really allow for it to be like that. Or do we want football to be just a slightly fairer game with a video assistant referee, which I think VAR, despite everyone moaning about it and the fan experience in the stadiums, I get it. It is worse for sure. But has it made the game ultimately fairer? Yes.
Yeah. I think football fans are generally quite spoiled. We want perfect decisions all the time and we want them immediately. Like, you can't have perfect
And we also
decisions.
want limbs
And
as soon as a goal
exactly,
goes
and you
in.
want massive celebrations as soon as a goal goes in. Like, to get to the right decision, it's going to take time. But the debate in the previous 3 years was it's taking too long. Do you want the right decisions, or do you want occasionally wrong decisions made really quickly? I want the right decisions. So I think we as fans need to get a grip with the fact that mistakes are part of the game. And yes, in offside decisions, it's almost inexcusable. Like, you can't really understand how they did get it wrong. But it will continue to happen, and we just need to grow up and get used to it.
Pat, just quickly, on being subjective, do you not think that the offside rule, like Liverpool, the only ones that could potentially be done out of a goal this year based on what is a straight blunder, whereas as opposed to penalties being with handballs being more subjective, do you not see why Liverpool have more right to be aggrieved that their goal's been ruled out in this day and age of VAR?
No.
No, it happens. It's happened.
No, because I'd say that there'll be something else that happens where we'll say, well, that will happen for the first and only time this season. Like, I mean, a couple of years ago, Arsenal had a goal ruled out where from a corner they thought Martinelli was offside. The camera couldn't actually see him. And show he was offside. So they took a guess and they said, based on the other camera angles, we suspect he's offside, but we can't actually prove it. So it should have stood. But they said, well, we think he's probably offside. And I think he probably was offside. So they chalked the goal off. That happened to nobody else that season. It's just how it goes. And Arsenal fans whined about it forever. And, like, fair enough, you whine about it for a bit. But I guarantee that 2 or 3 other things will happen this season where we'll say, well, that will happen to nobody else. I mean, that's just the way it goes. Like, it just feels like everybody thinks that it's happening solely to their team, that it's happening to their team the most. And, like, fundamentally, that's just not really true. And it used to happen previously as well. A much bigger issue is the fact that referees are kind of in a cartel, that refereeing isn't at a very high standard, and that the rules in lots of cases don't really make a lot of sense. Like, I mean, it's not about VAR giving it. It's about the fact that, like, the handball rule feels completely unintelligible at this point. So, I mean, VAR isn't the problem, but people don't like VAR because football is a very conservative game, and people want... So there's a part of me that thinks you should bin VAR just so that people can see what the game is remember what the game is actually like without it, and they get to celebrate their goals, but there are going to be exactly the same conversations. People want to talk about decisions when they don't want to talk about performances.
Facts.
Well, look, everyone's getting a point. Can't really separate anyone.
Lovely.
You'll
Thanks, Henry.
Okay, everyone gets a point after round 1. Everyone argued very well to keep VAR. Do you agree? Let us know in the comments down below. But round 2, this is where it really gets exciting. We're going to start building our all-time Premier League 11. And I want your keeper. I want your keeper to kick us off. Let's go.
Wow. Wowee.
3, 2, 1.
There we go.
We were all going to agree. So I put Schmeichel.
Wait,
I think it's really tough.
He's even
I
the
think
best
it's tough.
United keeper.
I was very tempted to go Van der Sar as
Yeah.
well. I was really tempted to go Van der Sar because of his exploits at Fulham. But I just think Schmeichel in the 90s was just so clear as a goalkeeper. Granted, didn't get to watch enough United in the 90s, given I was in nappies. But yeah, I definitely see it for Czech, but I just think Schmeichel...
Struggling here, lads.
A little bit struggling, but he did win the Euros with Denmark in 1992. Let's remember that.
Yeah, he did.
Did Czech win the Euros with arguably the best Czech Republic team of all time? No, he didn't. This
is Premier League.
This is Premier League as well.
Euros
This is Premier
once,
League. But I think he's got more Premier League titles than Czech. Also won a Champions League while he was there. At United, also did a sterling job at Manchester City and Aston Villa, where I believe he scored a goal. And was, I think where it's about Schmeichel, he was a key leadership figure in an era-defining Man United side. I don't think, someone like Roy Keane, like even someone like Roy Keane had to watch himself with Schmeichel because he was that much of a senior figure in that Man United dressing room. And I think he really defined what it was in terms of that dressing room at Old Trafford being able to manage itself. I don't think Man United win so many Premier League titles comprehensively in the 90s when you have Newcastle and Arsenal, who were both a lot stronger than I think people give them credit for at that time, without that kind of mentality that was in that dressing room. And Schmeichel was, I think, probably along with Roy Keane, the defining character there.
I also, to back this up, I agree with you. Like, I think Schmeichel had a fear factor as a goalkeeper. People would go through 1-on-1 with Schmeichel and be scared because he would come out really aggressively. Whereas a lot of Czech people talk about Czech's clean sheets, and Czech's record is absolutely phenomenal. You know, I've put him down for a reason. But he was also behind the tightest defence we've ever seen in the Premier League. Whereas Schmeichel's defence was actually kind of up and down. And
quite changeable.
Another point in Schmeichel's favour is Schmeichel spawned another Premier League title winning goalkeeper.
It's true, I should have said that. Yeah,
Czech has produced no other goalkeepers who've gone on to win the Premier League.
He brought in Edouard Mendy.
What do you mean?
Courtois is not Czech's son.
No, but we're talking about if you're setting a standard, because
no, I'm not talking about setting a standard. I'm talking about Kasper Schmeichel literally
What's that got to do with
came
anything?
out of
What's that got to do with anything?
Because without Peter Schmeichel, there is literally no Kasper Schmeichel.
and that means all of Kasper Schmeichel's clean sheets and his title go into Peter Schmeichel.
I think if you add them together, though, it wouldn't
well.
actually be that far above Czech's clean sheet record.
It won't be,
Both of
because
them.
Czech
would be
are
incredible.
I think I don't think there was a goalkeeper that before his head injury was as good at any short period of time as Petr Cech.
That was
for
quite
Chelsea.
a short period.
I mean, I think it was 2 years. And I think he was actually remarkable in that time. And yes, you know, Chelsea changed managers regularly in that time, but they never really stopped winning. And it was due to that spine of their side. And Cech was a key part of that. Even when he was probably dipping in terms of his Premier League performances in 2012, pulls out some massive performances in the Champions League, wins them the Champions League, plays a huge role in that. I think his time at Arsenal was slightly a little bit underrated as well. I think he was given a lot of stick unnecessarily. And yes, maybe the game had moved on slightly from that style of keeper. But that clean sheet record, those performances for Chelsea, they'll live on forever. I don't think anyone will ever concede fewer goals in a season.
Yeah, I think the 50
I think
to only concede 15 goals in the league.
The Premier League hasn't been going that long.
It's the record in Europe.
But like even what Dukes was saying, and what Dukes was saying about like him being a constant in the side. You're talking about Peter Schmeichel and the standards he set. Yeah, if you look at that Chelsea squad, we probably had the most managers in that period, but because of the core and the fact that he was so consistent during that period, yes, he dropped off, but not to a place where you could replace him with a top keeper. He was still.
I'm not sure if Cech hadn't come into that Chelsea side and you just had Kudachini there, that you'd actually have conceded that many
It
more
wouldn't
goals.
have been the same.
It wouldn't have been quite the same, but I don't know if it would have been. I think you would have still won title. I think you would have still won those two titles.
Nah, there's levels to this, but that's where you underrate him though. That's where you underrate him, because he was at Chelsea for over 10 years. Yeah, you're talking about Schmeichel. He went to Man City, who were considerably worse at the time, and then to Aston Villa. He wasn't able to maintain that standard.
I think Schmeichel was a lot older when he. I think
but then
started a lot older.
But then
Petr Cech was like 22 when he came to Chelsea.
Yeah, but then even that to go to Arsenal as well, like that's not like it was a step down, but it wasn't like it wasn't a step up. But it wasn't.
I think you misspoke. You said it was a step down, a step up.
No, it was a step down.
It was to a bigger club.
No, it was a step down, but it was still to a club that were trying to achieve things. You know what I mean? So I think that Petr Cech easily.
I've just got some quick stats for you guys. 202 clean sheets for Petr Cech, 180 for Peter Schmeichel, and then 82 for Kasper Schmeichel. So
exactly. Schmeichel's
you add them together.
I'm not sure I can rule against Petr Cech for not having a son.
Of course you can. That's on him. What are you talking about?
Just quickly, because three of you did go for Cech. Was anyone tempted for Alisson?
No.
I was quite tempted for
about
Alisson. I just think he's just not had as long in the Premier League.
Okay.
Like in 5 years' time, and if Alisson's still at the top of it, or at least if he's near the top of his game in 5 years' time, and he's still at Liverpool, and Liverpool's still doing well.
And trophies does come
into
into it as well. And I don't think he's won enough.
Yeah, Edison would have a claim like on trophies over Alisson.
I wouldn't do that.
Neither would I. But that's the point. Like, I mean, like he's won one title.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like overrated is the wrong word.
But
there's some saves that Alisson makes nowadays where it is genuinely like, oh my gosh, he's the best keeper in the world. He has made some incredible saves over there, like when Liverpool have dropped off in form and he's like saved them in games. But now I'm seeing every save that he makes, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's like it could be straight at him and he gets up like huffing and puffing and everyone's like, oh, he's incredible. And it's like, bro,
maybe his positioning's just bad, and that's why they always look spectacular. He's just like
it's his one-on-one ability,
knocking about on the wrong side of the goal.
Okay, Mikey, you get the point. You argued best there, and you actually argued well against Petr Cech in certain moments, and you got Pat to agree with you, so I can't really not give you a point.
Thank you, mate.
On that. So Schmeichel joins our.
Didn't change my mind.
Almost though.
Schmeichel is our keeper.
That is absolutely terrible. Actually. for Schmeichel to be our keeper.
Are you on delay or something?
No, because so at the end, are we going to have a team?
This isn't definitively
like half an hour ago.
This
What are
isn't
you talking
definitively
about?
the best team out there. This is the best team that is
Yeah, it
argued
is,
in this
effectively.
process, which goes in.
What are you talking about? It's not like
We
an
all-
embarrassment for Schmeichel.
We just all argued. You do what you want.
Don't worry, but
The gulf
Sam,
between
don't
them
worry.
is not big.
Sam, sorry.
Henry just hates Chelsea. That's what it is. He just hates Chelsea.
Who doesn't?
Right, it's time for fullbacks. Get your fullbacks down on your board now. The way this works is if you all agree on one player, they will go in, and then we'll argue it out for the other, perhaps subjective player. Is that okay, Dukes?
That sounds great.
In 1, 2, 3, reveal. Ooh.
Trent, we're coming again.
Who have you got?
What are you
I
thinking?
knew you'd all go for Walker.
God,
I know
it's so
you'd all go
boring.
for Walker.
No, but there is.
I know,
It's
yeah.
right.
Rubbish.
It is
It's right.
right. Yeah, you can't look
can't,
past it.
like,
Like,
Trent.
come on, Trent. Don't get me mad.
Trent is brilliant, and like in terms of ability on the ball, in terms of his creativity from right back, he's by far the best. But he can't be the best right back of all time when he's quite deficient in a lot of areas.
He's not that deficient. He's
is.
slightly
He's changed
deficient
the role.
defensively. And I still
But
think
is the gap between
Yeah, but you're
Walker's
acting like it's
attacking as
ridiculous.
bad?
It's
I mean,
not.
the gap between
Yeah.
Trent's defending is significantly below.
Can we have one
Walker's, the difference
conversation
between
at
their
a time,
attacking for me?
definitely not. I don't think Walker has not been
What are you two giggling
a
about?
particular.
Having fun.
Walker has not been a very productive player in the final third for about 5 years.
But he's
now.
a right
Is it his
back.
role?
He's a
Henry's
right back.
Yeah,
Testing.
but we're looking at Ashley Cole was like he
I love that you put A Cole there.
A. Cole.
Like it could still be Andy Cole. Just to be clear, it's not Cheryl Cole. Hey, left back in our
Or are
team.
you playing Andy
Okay,
Cole
great.
at right back?
Good
I'm
news.
playing Andy Cole at right back. Did you see him at Newcastle?
He does deserve a spot.
Yeah. Just quite give him a shout out. I think Trent's attacking ability is like no one else we've seen in the Premier League.
Agree.
From right back, and like very few players we've seen at all from right back in our lifetimes. And I think that his unique skill set does set him apart. And the defensive side, yes, Walker, amazing in terms of his recovery pace, in terms of his ability to play in a back three as well, for sure. Like
And
great.
consistency over that many years as well.
Yeah.
He's been fairly consistent, but like
He's had rarely any drop in. Like,
aside from the first half of last season, when most Man City fans didn't want him to succeed.
So that's 6 months, yeah. So let's say from when he was at Spurs and at the top of
Winning
his game,
Young Player of the Year award.
and then going to Manchester City.
Yeah, I
You're
don't
talking,
know.
if you're talking about both of those players, talking about Walker and Trent, you're saying that Trent defensively isn't that great. But if you compare Kyle Walker,
I don't think Trent is that bad defensively.
If you
though. Like,
compare him to Kyle Walker, it is considerably worse.
but then when you
Not at his
compare
peak.
when you compare Trent's
whose
attacking output to Walker,
Either peak.
At Trent's peak, are you telling me that he?
No, I'm saying
Trent
that.
even reached
I'm saying that you're making an argument there. You're talking about like Walker's career, whereas I think you could definitely argue that Trent's highest level is the highest level any right back has ever reached in the Premier League.
I don't.
You could,
I
he has done.
definitely-
There was a point where he was pretty solid defensively, and also he did things we've never seen a right back do in the Premier League. You don't think that that's at least worthy of a shout?
Oh, it's definitely worthy of a shout. I'm not surprised someone mentioned him. I just think
I am.
Yeah, I just think I would want a more well-rounded player, and like there is a
right
reason.
back.
Even though I would pick Trent for England, there is a reason that he's not picked in these big games. I know he's had injury issues in major tournaments as well. And Trippier is a factor as well. But I think Walker is just the comfortably better all-round player. I think he's won more across his career. I think he was a key part of that Spurs side, which was really good in the Poch era before moving to Man City. Everyone doubted that fee. He's completely proved to be value for money, except for that 6 months at City. He's been pretty much first choice. You know, Cancelo has moved to the left at points because Walker was so solid. I just think he's a great player.
And he's not that bad going forward either. Like
No,
you're talking about like
He's good, but
the
he's-
deficiencies. Yeah, if you're actually looking at Kyle Walker, like overall his game, it's probably got better as he's got older. Like he's matured in his game. A lot of people said that as he gets older, if he loses his pace and all of this stuff, none of that has
hasn't
really
lost his
happened.
pace, but he hasn't-
none of that has really happened.
he's nowhere
If anything,
near as
he's-
productive as an attacking player as he was in his
We
late
don't
days at
need- but
Spurs.
we don't need that from him. We're talking about right back. Like you're talking about a role that has changed because of Trent.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're talking defensively, when
But I think that
Liverpool
counts for
went-
something.
no,
I
but
think
when
it counts for a
Liverpool,
lot.
there's like if you're talking about a standard, yeah. If Trent isn't attackingly amazing, everything else to his game isn't that great. With Kyle Walker, if he's having an average game, at least defensively he'll be fine. Like
Yeah,
Trent, you can't say that for him.
I get that. Like Walker probably has more like 6 out of 10s, but I just think Trent has way more 9 out of 10s.
I'd
I
agree
think
with
Trent like can be such a game changer and he has defined the way that one of the best Premier League teams we've ever seen has played, in a way that Walker was very much came into, and fair play to him, came into Man City and became a system player, whereas Trent defines Klopp's system.
Trent is an assistant player as well. Trent is
well, but yeah,
Trent has won games for Liverpool, but like single-handedly, which is kind of an insane thing
But
to say.
Walker's
of a fullback.
consistency has probably won trophies more so than Trent.
I don't think he's won trophies by itself.
But he's part of a unit.
No, but so
And he
are you
stops
guys
from losing games,
No, but
I don't
are
think
you
he wins
guys
them games,
actually
is how I put it.
underrating like the fact that a defender can win you games? Like you're basically saying because he does so much going forward that it basically downplays everything Kyle Walker does as a defender.
It's rare that one defender wins you a game. Defense is a team effort.
I think if you
Also,
were
Walker has also-
he can create all those chances and Salah could miss them, and then we're just talking about.
And
But he's also won
also-
games with goals scored as well. I mean,
We're also forgetting as well, like Trent gets absolutely hammered for like mistakes at the back and not being an amazing defender or whatever. Like the amount of errors that have led to goals from Kyle Walker over his career is actually quite high. Like he had, like especially in his like first 3 years at City, at least 2 or 3 errors per season were leading to goals. I think
First half
I remember
of last year?
I remember that Wigan game, I think in the FA Cup.
Trent on your
in the
thing,
17-18.
You keep on everything.
But
it's just like you're acting
how
like
many did Trent
offended
even?
by him
How many did
saying
Trent
this.
do in
because-
6 months last year? Honestly, it was like there was a time where it was
But
pretty
that's
much
also
every
about
game
system
he was
and
making
role.
an error.
That is also about system and role, right?
He had a very bad
like
6 months. And if we're
Kyle
talking
Walker
about bad
plays in
6 months periods, I don't think Walker has ever been as bad defensively as Trent was in that
playing in
season.
an
No
exceptionally
chance.
conservative
No
Man
chance.
City side last season, and everyone was like, "He's amazing one-on-one." I think he won a quarter of his one-on-ones in the first half of last season.
I think if someone was to
up
like
until actually
design a
till the Real
manual
Madrid
and it was
fixture.
like how to be the perfect fullback, they base it off Kyle Walker.
Facts.
They don't base it off Trent.
Facts.
Nah, you base it off Danny Alves.
True.
Well, Walker's only had 6 errors leading to goals in 370 appearances, according to the Premier League website.
So that was a lie, McCubs.
Just
well, they all
quickly,
came in that 3 year period. They all came in that 3 year
Just
period.
quickly, I fully accept Ashley Cole going in for the sake of variety on right back. Did no one think about Neville,
No.
Zabaleta, Laurent, Dixon, Azpilicueta, Ivanovic? Are these 2 just clear?
Aspie
Ivanovic.
Ivanovic deserves shouts.
As be too limited, Ivanovic does not deserve a shout at all.
I think he was very good at
He was a
centre-back
good
as well.
player,
He was
but that's
quality.
I think before Walker's career, I think it was almost people unanimously have said Gary Neville, just because he was so reliable. But he was such a limited right back to what we've seen in the last 10 years.
Yeah, I remember we did an extra
Bobby
time
Hara.
podcast about 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and Zabaleta was like a close second to Neville. Like he was very good at Man City, but his career did really peter out at West Ham.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't rate it.
Points are going to Dougie and Pat, actually.
Oh, cheers.
for that round. So.
Actually, I mean, and for sake of variety, who like there's got to be some competition to Ashley Cole at this point.
If Robertson probably needs to win another title for it to happen.
Yeah.
Even
But
at that.
Robertson, and I do think Irwin deserves to be spoken about in this category as well. But the main problem is that like Man City didn't have a great left back right during this Pep era.
The whole thing,
like they
yeah.
obviously used Delph there, they used Clichy, like they've had a roster of guys there, including like
Gets in
centre backs played out
Yeah.
wide. Like nobody's really done it. Yeah, you could talk about Zinchenko, but again, not consistently like first choice,
only
was
messing
he?
around.
You could talk about Cancelo. He was probably the best in that position,
Yeah.
which is crazy.
Trent effect.
It's very difficult.
Yep.
All right, centre backs
All
now.
right.
And remember, if you argue a unique player well, there could be points in it for you. So-
Really. This is
What-
when you
what
encourage the
said-
crazy
are you,
takes.
are you suggesting Hangeland here?
No, so far we've had like 3 agreements on goalies, with 3
Yeah.
agreements on centre halves. We had everyone agreeing on the first one.
This is where I am going
just
more
try-
conventional.
trying to stir up
be
a bit
fair.
of thinking.
This is where I am going more conventional.
We've got a lot of positions to get through as well. So
3, 2, 1. Show your board. JT Rio,
Oh,
Ferdinand
company.
Company, Terry Rio.
no
Yeah.
Terry, no Tessa.
Ooh.
Wow.
Right, Obba, I want to hear from you first, please.
Well, I feel like this is just very simple. To
I
be
mean,
honest. I think
yeah.
if we're talking about the best centre backs to ever play in the Premier League over,
That is what we're talking about.
well, you put Company and he was injured half the time. But if you're talking about consistency and winning trophies, level at the top, JT and Rio, I feel like I don't think there's anyone really in that conversation. They've tried to put like Van Dijk and players like Company because they've had a few years at the top level, but I don't think we've seen anyone replicate that level from JT and Rio, like in terms of on the ball, defensively, being able to go through different eras, and you start in an era where everything's physical and they're probably one of the youngest centre-backs, and then you're going to a ball-playing era where you've got to be able to use your left foot, your right foot, you've got to play through the midfield, you've got to find your strikers. Like, these guys have been able to adapt so well, and I think that just puts them at the top, to be honest.
Yeah, I think Rio has to be in. I think they both have to be in there. If it was who's the better bloke, obviously Company gets in there over Terry, but
or Ferdinand, to be honest.
Yeah, probably true. But
they're both garbage.
Yeah, I do respect Company a lot. But I just think for me, it's just like I think Rio is, was the era-defining ball-playing centre-back in the Premier League, potentially still the best ball-playing centre-back we've seen in the Premier League. John Terry, I think, just as a centre-back, as if you want that blend of a ball-playing centre-back and someone who just really did get in the way of everything, whose anticipation was just perfect, also a big leadership figure, also excellent in the opposition box. I just think they are the best pairing, despite it never really working out for them.
No Vidic for you? No Vidic?
No, I think Terry was just better than Vidic, and I think Vidic was that kind of player. Rio and Vidic, arguably the best pairing we've seen in the Premier League as a club.
Terry,
and exactly, like Carvalho and Terry are probably the other outstanding pair. Unless I'm forgetting someone else, but I think Company is close. I think Company is slightly underrated. I think a lot of people would go Van Dijk over Company, and people do forget that Company was the injuries counted against him, and I think that's one of the reasons why I wouldn't have him here. But was playing at an incredibly high level for like nearly a decade at Man City, during a time when they won a lot of trophies.
During that time as well, he never really had a truly outstanding partner as well in a way that these two did.
Yeah.
So that's another reason to give him a shout out, but I wouldn't have him in over these two.
I think the Company basically, he gave you what I would describe as conventional, old-fashioned centre-backs would give you, plus some extra stuff. So, a guy like Vidic was just a really good, like, stay-at-home centre-back. He wasn't an amazing ball player. He wasn't going to step into midfield. But Company could do everything Vidic could. He had the physical presence. He had the aerial presence. He had just the one-on-one ability. But he was also a much more sophisticated passer. But he could get into midfield. He could score screamers from range as well. I mean, Company, his ability to come back from injury and almost immediately regain the highest level was pretty staggering, to be honest. And also, Company's role in that team basically spans the period from City trying to push up towards the top four of the Premier League into them being the best team in the world. Like, that is a period that Company was really the key man at that club. And the way that they, built themselves into a side that could compete with anybody, I think, is partially down to his leadership, at least. Ferdinand, I just think, is the best. He's just the best Premier League centre back that we've ever seen. Van Dijk, if he had maintained it for longer, I think would have been above him. But Ferdinand was like a modern centre back, but playing 15 years earlier. Like, his passing range was staggering. He was great at Leeds. He was great at United. Just a really, really intelligent player, ironically. And just, also a big physical presence. Like Ferdinand could just do everything at the back. The reason I don't put John Terry in, I don't know, I always thought that, like, John Terry was a big attacking presence. He was a very, very good defender. I think his passing was considerably overrated. It was fine. It was nothing special. It was certainly not at Company's level, for example. And I also think he was playing in the most conservative side of the era, in a side surrounded by guys who were also all amazing at their jobs. He played behind Makelele, for example, or he played with Ashley Cole to the side. Like, he did have a lot of protection around him. He was still very, very good, but I just don't think this idea that he was like one of the greatest defenders ever, it's just like, I can't put him in. And his hair was an embarrassment. So that needs to be mentioned as well.
Wow.
You can't be gelling your hair like that into your mid-30s. It's shameful.
It's interesting arguments.
Go bald with dignity like Dougie. Look how sick Dougs looks.
There we go.
Got called Amrabat on TV this morning.
Okay, Pat, I hear you. Sam, quickly, you had something to say?
going to be about Chelsea, Sam?
It is, yeah. but what is really I'm struggling to get is that every time you talk about the Chelsea side or the most successful years when it started, you talk about the team and how, you know, Terry was accommodated by, you know, Makelele and Essien and these players. Or Peter Cech, you say the defence, right?
I put Cech in.
But you was arguing against.
You were acting like he was being ridiculous for putting him one of the most successful goalkeepers of all time.
No,
what are you talking about?
I feel like it was very clear, but I'm just saying in general, when that Chelsea team is brought up, it's always, this player made him look better.
No, it isn't.
It is.
No, it isn't. People literally, you've all put Terry in.
It is.
You've all put Cole in. You've all put Cech in. What are you talking about?
You said that. Even when you said the
this level of like victim mentality.
It's not even victim. You said Manchester City, yeah, and you're talking about the players that company, the team that he played with, and he was at the start of that. But there was also quality players that he played with that made him easily slot into that team when he came back from injury with a solid.
He had Fernando in front of him, and he had Kyle Clichy to his left.
They did have good players.
Kyle Walker, like these players around him. It wasn't just he just walked in and suddenly he was Hercules, bro. He had a quality team around him.
They were way less
That's what I'm
defensive.
saying. I'm not saying that they don't deserve a shout, but
you literally, Sam.
I think we need some points.
Your brain disconnects when Chelsea come on.
No, I'm just saying.
You two are both getting a point.
Just saying.
I think they need a point.
Wonder how many more Chelsea players are going to be on Sam's list. Is Drogba going to make it? Somebody else middling?
I think now we're at the defence, there probably will be maybe one Chelsea player left.
Who knows?
I'm putting Terry in next to Ferdinand, but the company shout. I did.
Well, good shout.
I thought it was intelligently presented. Okay, we are moving on to
Midfield 3.
the midfield 3. I want one defensive-minded midfielder, and I want two. Whatever. Okay, that's the stipulation. One defensive, two.
So one second, we're playing a 4-3-3.
We're playing a 4-3-3. It's the modern 4-4-2.
My all-time Premier League 11, and I've thought about this a lot, and it's always been a 4-4-2.
Get with the times, Mikey.
Okay. All right.
I want one definite CDM, and you can do whatever you want with the rest of your team.
No, surely it just needs to be balanced.
Yeah.
For example, you could have like three guys who could do some defending.
This isn't like fantasy football where you can just play strikers.
Yeah, you can't Garth Crooks it.
I think this is a really good midfield. What I've got here.
I've got a lethal midfield.
You're not necessarily like definitively my favourite Premier League midfielders, but as a Premier League midfielder, it's
quite hard to get it wrong.
Yeah,
you can do a really sick midfield three.
Okay,
if you ban these three, I could do another one.
Yeah. So
3, 2, 1.
Oh, we've got the same. Oh,
the boys in blue.
Yeah.
What have you got?
Keane, Lamps, and
We've
Gerrard.
literally got the same one, Dukes.
Snap.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
The big call was
we should get a point for snapping on that. That's quite
that is
rare.
rare.
I'd never really considered Kante before, but then I just thought, out of all, because Keane wasn't really a pure defensive midfielder, neither was Vieira a pure defensive midfielder, but I think Kante, that Leicester season, he created the greatest story in Premier League history probably, and he was excellent at Chelsea for a number of years. They don't win the Champions League in 2021 without him. I think he's very difficult to leave out, to be honest. And then Gerrard Lampard was a toss-up. I went with Gerrard. I preferred watching Gerrard play. I think he had more to his game. Lampard was obviously a better goal scorer. And then De Bruyne, I think by the time he retires, everyone will just accept that he's probably the best midfielder we've ever seen.
Speaking of best midfielder we've ever seen, you've not included him, Sam. You didn't fancy KDB. You've gone for
Lamps and Gerrard.
Okay.
And Keane.
Would you like to talk me through your board?
It's the most serious Brexit lineup, that.
It was a tough one, to be honest. I didn't really know which way to go because I felt the same. Like, obviously, Keane wasn't a direct CDM, but obviously he could.
He can play there. Yeah.
Vieira, I wanted to put Vieira, but then I thought I can just see this midfield working in it. Keane telling these men where to go and all of that stuff. But I think Lamps, the reason I put him over KDB is because I think that the numbers that he put up in terms of goals and assists consistently in the Premier League, it's not overlooked because obviously it's rated, but I think now that KDB's come into this conversation and everyone's looking at the newer generation and saying, who's gonna be the next, I feel like he doesn't get the credit he deserves because I feel like he's a one-of-one midfielder. Like don't get a midfielder that scores that many goals, is a player that if your striker's only scoring 11, 12 goals in a season, you're still able to get to FA Cup finals, still able to win the Premier League. And that was simply because of him, on top of the fact that he didn't really have that many periods where he was out injured for long periods. KDB has had at least 3 or 4 where he's had 2 or 3 months out injured. And because of the quality of his side, they've been able to still, go for the titles and go for these trophies. So simply because of consistency at the top level, I have to put Lamps and Gerrard. You can't. Gerrard is Gerrard, isn't it?
The thing is that, I think KDB over Lamps is a far KDB versus Lamps. I think is really not a competition. I think it's KDB versus Gerrard, which would be the biggest competition. I think they're the more similar players. I think I love Frank Lampard. If this was a 4-4-2, Lampard would be much more likely getting in. His goals record is amazing, but I just think on pure midfield overall ability, especially when you've got a destroyer in there, I just think Gerrard, Gerrard can, first of all, I think his defensive contributions were always better for Liverpool. Playing in a much worse Liverpool side, he was able to produce so many magic moments. I just don't think you can't have KDB in there. I think we've seen things from KDB that we've not really seen from other midfielders. Stuff that we saw from Gerrard a bit, but not to the same degree. Like Dukes was saying, I think Kante, that's the thing. I wouldn't normally put Kante in, but I think he is clearly the best destroyer we've ever seen in the Premier League. I was having a look back at that Leicester season. He actually made 10 tackles and interceptions a game in that season. It's actually insane.
Energy.
In a counter-attacking team, yes, but 10 tackles and interceptions a game, we'll just never see another player do that, basically. We'll never see another player do that. The best players get 5 or 6. I think, I just really like this midfield. I think it's really fun.
Nice. You got Vieira in there, Pat?
Yeah, I think of KDB and Gerrard as competing for a place, and I gave the place to KDB. I think Gerrard actually often had quite a free role in that Liverpool team. He was allowed to do what he wanted, and you would see him make crunching tackles, but he would play on the right. He would basically go wherever he wanted on the pitch, and I just don't think you can have 2 guys like that in the midfield, or I didn't want 2 guys like that in the midfield. And if I'm going to have a guy with a free role, it's going to be KDB, who's much more of a final third specialist than Gerrard. Gerrard was also a really high usage player in that he would take a lot of pot shots from range. He would try a lot of Hail Mary balls, and that's great. That's one of the things that made him entertaining. But I think KDB kind of pulls off a lot of that stuff while also being a much more efficient player. So to me, then it was more about how do I fill this role in between the kind of number 10-ish type and the number 6-ish type. And for that, really, I thought it was probably Vieira or Lampard. And I went a bit with my heart on this. I think that Lampard is the better player in the sense that if you have Lampard in your team, there was a long period where he was kind of happy playing as a 6 almost, huge defensive output in his later seasons, could also play as a 10. But if you want a specialist box-to-box midfielder, Lampard actually didn't do that as much as he, did one role at a time for a period, So having him in your squad was amazing. Because Lampard would basically fill whatever hole you needed him to in the midfield. But if you just want a number 8, a guy who can put in huge contribution on the defensive end, who has an amazing passing range, who has an amazing ability to drive through the midfield, who also has final third ability, who also has huge physical presence, amazing match intelligence and leading ability on the pitch, Vieira is pretty hard to beat. So to me, this was about specialising in each role, and that's why I got this.
Was he definitively better than Yaya Toure?
We've not mentioned him.
No, again, Yaya
he
didn't have that many years. But
I think longevity
was,
I think longevity-wise, certainly, and also again, Yaya Toure. There were periods where he would put up defensive work, but actually, as time went on, he didn't really try that hard defensively, and some of his best seasons were moving into the final third more, which I loved. Yaya Toure is one of my favourite Premier League players. But as a specialist, box-to-box midfielder, Vieira was better and a much better match controller than Toure. Toure didn't tend to control matches so much as define them with a bit of magic.
And one more name quickly, Paul Scholes. No one considered Paul Scholes.
I feel really sold on Scholes in the same way. I think because he was playing a much more distribution role when I was first getting into football. His best, probably most entertaining football was towards the end of the 90s when he was playing as a second striker or as a 10. It wasn't someone that I ever watched and really connected with in the same way that these other players did.
I'm just intrigued because you often hear other pros
Yeah.
Cool Scholes.
Joe will be screaming at his laptop.
Xavi, you know.
That's a talent thing, though, I think.
A lot of them look to him and say he's one of the best midfielders we've
I
ever
actually
seen.
think Scholes was incredibly entertaining towards the end of his career. Like I was watching back actually some Man United highlights from 2007 when United had Ronaldo, Tevez, Rooney, in that team, and Scholes was like the best player at most games. He was actually the best player at most games. His distributor era was, I think, probably his best era, and that counts a lot for him. But like, was he better at like lots of things in the same way that these? You know, he wasn't a better defensive. He wasn't particularly good defensively. That's the problem. He wasn't like an amazing tackler. It gets I think it gets people say it too much that he couldn't tackle. Like he could tackle, but he wasn't. He was nowhere near Kante or Makelele's level or whatever. That just wasn't his position. And yeah, like who would I rather have on the edge of the box? Like KDB and Gerrard for sure. Although actually Scholes he did have a good striker.
Wait, do you not think Keane could do the Kante role though? Obviously not.
Not to the same extent.
Not numbers, but
I also think we need to remember like Kante at Chelsea then became a more expansive footballer as well.
And the defensive midfielder was way less of a thing in Keane's era. Like the
it was a midfield too, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a midfield too, and you were expected to do everything. Like
exactly.
Keane almost, it's hard to know whether he fits into the 6 or the 8, I think, in this midfield, based on how teams would run back then.
Yeah. Okay. Pat, your Vieira argument is getting you a point.
Yeah.
I did enjoy the idea of balance. And then it comes down, because
we both agreed. We both agreed off without even knowing.
It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
I know. All right, point to each of you. Sorry, Sam. I don't mean that really.
say sorry.
Okay.
Against Liverpool.
Yeah. Front three. Do it as you wish. Once again, remember, balance will be considered.
Front three, so we're okay. Wow. Okay.
So if you've just got 3 like target men, I'll be confused. So
this is really tough.
Okay, it's all to play for as we go into the final round. Anyone can emerge as victor. There's 2 points up for grabs in this round. Just 2 and 2 only. Okay. McCubbin?
Yeah. Cool. All right, let's go.
Maybe 3 points. We'll see how it goes.
Really tough. This is really tough.
Okay.
Bored.
3, 2, 1, go.
Bosh.
Ooh,
All quite different, actually.
Ooh.
Well, we've pretty much all got Henry and.
Who have you got?
Henry's the only
one. And Salah.
We all agree on
Has
2
everyone got
out.
Salah?
Yeah, everyone's got Henry and Salah.
Not
And then
that
we
different.
all disagree on the last one.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, this does make it. This makes
Henry
it very
left wing though. Is that for everyone?
Well,
Henry was never a real centre forward.
I had to get him in.
yeah, like he still works on the left wing, and he can basically just be an inside forward at this point. You know what I mean? Because he used to play in a front 2. And in a front 2, you can kind of play a little bit like an inside forward anyway. Back in the day.
Yeah.
Whereas like Salah, like you know what I mean. If Salah was around in 2003, he probably would have played in the front 2. He probably would have just been a striker. So I think that's fine, especially when you've got Kane there coming back and linking up play. Henry coming in a bit like Heung-min Son, but with more skills. Yeah. Am I making my argument right now?
It is not going well.
Rooney is a really good shout.
Yeah,
I've got to say.
I'm really sad because Rooney is basically my favourite footballer ever, but I just as a centre forward, especially given that you've got Henry already in this team and Salah, who's also primarily a goal scorer. Like it's a really goal scoring front line. Like actually, yeah, in some ways maybe that's an argument for Rooney actually, but I think Kane's ability in the last few years to drop deep as well, and also his finishing ability, like there is no doubt about it. I think Kane's a better finisher than Rooney. Like he's one of the best finishers we've ever seen.
I probably agree.
It's just quite hard to put somebody in the team who never won the Premier League.
Yeah,
it is. Well, Gerrard. We all put Gerrard in, didn't we?
I didn't.
I did.
Did you not? Oh no, you didn't. But 3 of us did. Anyway, yeah, it's true. It's true.
Player.
I could be swayed on Rooney actually.
I just think Rooney is one of the best players the Premier League has ever seen in any position.
Yeah,
and like I think he was much better at the Kane role than Kane was. And yes, Kane might be a slightly better finisher, but Rooney still scored loads and loads of goals for sides that were often on paper as poor as the recent Spurs sides. I think he pretty much carried them to more respectable league finishes, to be honest. Could play all across the front line, exceptional out wide, exceptional in midfield, had a pretty good end to his career as well, even though he was getting pretty old and a little bit unfit. I think he has to be in.
I just don't see how you leave out Shearer, like he's the top scorer.
I'm a bit young for Shearer.
That's the thing. I remember watching Shearer as a kid, and he just scored all the time. Like, I mean, he's just relentless. He obviously won the league as well, you know, with kind of an unfancied side. And he was the most expensive player in the world, like for a reason. Like at one stage, like he was just an incredible goal scorer. To me, he and Andy Cole, they're a type of forward who's kind of died out to some degree. Like Kane is one of the last few of that type, but even Kane is a little bit more rounded. That said, Shearer would drop out wide and was a surprisingly good crosser. But he just had every ability that you would want a centre forward to have. And I think if he were around today, it'd be worth like 200 mil. Like the guy's just absolutely outrageous. And I just felt like he's the all-time top Premier League scorer. He needs to go in. Henry and Salah, I think, pick themselves. Like nobody really competes with Salah on that side. Henry has to go in somewhere. So if he doesn't go in up front, then he's got to go on the left.
I have gone for the best player in each of these positions in the Premier League history, in my opinion. Think right wing.
Who's that last player you've got on the board?
Ronaldo. Does it not look like that?
Okay.
Ronaldo. Yeah.
Ronaldo.
I think if you're talking about having a left winger, I don't like. I can hear what you're saying about Henry, but if you put Henry and Ronaldo out wide, I think you're just getting more from Ronaldo, from what we've seen in the league. And I think if we're talking about the best striker to ever grace the Premier League, I think it has to be Thierry Henry. If he had stayed in the league longer or come earlier or stayed
for a long
in
time,
longer,
but yeah.
I think he would have. I think if he wanted to, he could have broke the record. Let me put it that way, because I think
that's probably true.
Ability-wise, he's the best striker that we've seen in the league. Salah's obviously, his numbers speak for himself. So I think this is the
My only issue is I always think of Ronaldo as playing on the right, personally. Like when particularly during his peak at United. But he could play on the left.
Ronaldo. I mean,
it was about 6 years.
It is 40. I mean, Ronaldo's 42 goal season. He played through the centre a lot. Like he was playing as the striker, and Rooney was playing.
Yeah.
Rooney was playing on the left.
We can make that argument. We can make that argument about Henry, and we can make that argument about Rooney as well, right? Like they all played in different positions. I mean, like I would think like a guy who defined the left wing role for basically a decade in the Premier League was Eden Hazard. I thought about him. You know, he was, in my opinion, the best player in the league in about 5 separate seasons.
And
also,
David
Silva's missed out on the basis of us playing a 4-3-3 and us wanting to have like pure attackers up top. But like David Silva, in a more reserved role, that I think he would compete as well in a kind of left-sided role. But I'm really tempted to go for Rooney now. I'm actually quite tempted to go. I'm going to go for Rooney. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go Rooney up top.
That bodes well for you, Dougie.
I only want to put Rooney in if I can drop Salah, though. I really don't like Salah being in there.
We'll put Rooney out on the right.
That feels stupid, though. That just feels like me bending the rules to try and get the players in who I
really like this as Rooney playing as a bit more facilitator. Henry and Salah coming through.
Henry has to go up top.
I think if you go back and watch Henry's highlights, you'll be surprised how few of them happen in what you would consider a normal centre forward position.
He was cutting in from that. Do you know his classic finish was cutting in from the left?
And I'm not playing. You can't really say that about Kane to the same degree.
I think
but Kane drops deep a lot.
But Henry actually like playing. You will watch him play on the wing for about like 10-minute stretch of a match. Like he would do this.
Too much ego in those sides. This one will actually work better, I think, as well, which is quite a crucial factor.
Wait, who's not got the ego there? Who's not got the ego in that team?
Rooney. Rooney had no ego. Okay. That was one of his key assets. He was up for doing anything for the team.
Sorry, who's the Ronaldo
Shearer,
team?
Yeah, that's got an ego.
Shearer?
And I think Shearer and Henry, I don't know whether that would necessarily work as well as you think.
Yeah, I'm sensing a bit of beef in that side too, actually.
all the two most prolific men in Premier League history. I wonder how they'll perform together. I think they'll be fun.
Let's see.
Guys, I said there's 2 points up for grabs. Not only did I like your argument initially, Dougie, you then got Mikey to change his answer, and you had him changing his answer before he'd even started speaking. So you get 2 points for your argument on that one.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
You say there was 3 points up for grabs?
No, I said there was 2. Definitely two.
You're running away with this, Dukes.
Okay, that concludes Team Talk for another week. We have our team. So this is based on the arguments that I observed. Schmeichel in goal, Walker at right back, Terry Ferdinand at centre half, Ashley Cole at left back, Conte, Vieira, De Bruyne in midfield, Salah on the right. We've got Rooney down the middle, and we've got Henry at right wing. Remember, this is just
pretty
based
good.
on the
pretty good.
Henry at
It was
right
always
wing.
going to be good.
Left wing.
left wing.
Okay.
Left wing. My apologies.
Okay.
This is based on the arguments we heard. Let us know in the comments down below if you agree. And remember, it doesn't matter if you don't. So,
I agree with that.
let's get to the winners for this round. Coming in last place, Obba, a respectable 2 points. It was tough out there. Second to last, Mikey on 3 points. Pat, strong effort on 4 points. And our winner today on a big 5 points. It's
Well done.
Chelsea's biggest fan. It's Dougie Critchley. All right, that's been Team Talk for another week. Let us know if you enjoyed it down below, and we'll see you next time. Subscribe to Football Daily and all that. Bye-bye.